All right, what's going on there, folks? Welcome back here to a Sunday night. End of the weekend is upon us. It is about 10:19 p.m. here, California time. August 25th, 2024 is the date. Latest activity here on the globe shows a recent 5.7 earthquake coming into the Panama area. About, looks like 12 kilometers deep or so. One of the latest quakes on the area. In the area, I should say. Nothing showing up here from the USGS, but this is a fairly recent earthquake being reported here by the EMSC within the last 10 minutes. So we have seen a number of large quakes out here today, including a 6.9 over here across the Tonga area. Right? Look at that. Pretty large earthquake activity here earlier this afternoon. 6.9, 66 miles deep. And we've seen a number of large earthquake aftershocks here in this area as well, including a 6.1 1 minute later. 5.3 following that 6.1 a few minutes later as well. So obviously strain building up here in this area of the Tonga Trench. Got to remember, we've seen a lot of deeper activity here recently into the subduction zone of the Tonga Trench. This is upstream here, above the deeper activity. And, of course, a lot of strain builds up here across this region for some large earthquake activity. And I guarantee you, it can get way larger than a 6.9. 6.9 is actually a fairly minimal earthquake that can take place out here across the Tonga Trench. But nonetheless, it's a pretty decent earthquake. Did not trigger any type of tsunami warning or statement. Obviously, on any large magnitude earthquakes, there's always going to be some type of informational release, but there was no warning, no type of advisory or anything on this earthquake. It was too deep, too weak of an earthquake here. You got to have something above 7.5 and above and shallow earthquake to produce a tsunami out here across this area. But goodness, definitely seen some uptick going on here across the area of the Pacific Plate. And, of course, when one area moves, right, when you adjust one area of the jigsaw puzzle out here, you got to remember we're just floating on some land out here. These are kind of like big boats sitting on some hot lava or magma. Molten rock and metals below us here. And it can range anywhere from the oceanic crust there, about 10, 15 kilometers, up to, some deeper areas, 100 kilometers or so underneath the continental crust. So, it's a little scary, right? Who knows? I mean, we could see some volcanic activity trigger up because of this recent earthquake activity. There's a number of volcano chains out here across the area of the Tonga Trench. So we'll keep an eye on this area for volcanic activity. But for now, just, some sixes out there. And 2 6s within 1 minute of each other. That's pretty significant. I'm going to show you guys here real quick historical data. A lot of folks I'm wondering if what we've been seeing here recently is above the average. And we'll take a look at that here in just a minute. I want to show you guys, the average typical earthquake activity out here on any given day. One earthquake here at the southern end of the Cascadia megathrust area, right? That's a pretty scary word, right? Megathrust. That earthquake out here can produce a 9.0 or greater across the Pacific Northwest, right? One may not realize it, but that would devastate the entire area out here. Not only the earthquake, but the subsequent tsunami that is expected to swamp inland there by a mile or so and inundate every single aspect of the land out here. Not a good scenario, right? But we have populated the area out here as humans, right? We've advanced. And there's a hazard where we live out here across the Pacific Northwest. And I think everyone needs to be on guard for some earthquake activity out here. 2.0, 13 miles here into the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. Let me check Trimmer here real quick. Yeah, we can use this one here real quick. I have a couple other windows here that I'm going to bring up some information on. I thought, that's a pretty significant amount. Look at that, 729 epicenters of tremor along the mainly up here across Washington area, a little bit in Oregon and Northern California as well. That could be why we're seeing a little bit of earthquake activity upstream here to the left here on the map of the Cascadia got some tremor occurring down underneath Northern California, but most of it's up here across the Washington area. 729 epicenters. And in fact, we haven't really seen anything of this type of scenario probably since about the end of 2022, I would say. So it's been a couple years since we've seen some elevated activity out here along the Cascadia in terms of tremor. So we'll continue to watch that, obviously, for some movement, right? Tremor activity and increasing movement. Nothing going on yet from the USGS here for the earthquake activity. 5.7 there in the Panama area, but nothing showing up. Let me see here. There's a P wave right here. Notice that. Well, those are S waves. The wavy lines here indicating some S waves kicking up from the 5.7 in the Panama area there in Southern California. But interesting activity nonetheless here is a 4.8 following the earthquake activity there in Panama. Look at that. So nothing showing up here from the USGS map yet, but there is some activity here around the Panama area. This is going to be the southwestern edge here of the Caribbean plate. And what takes place here along the western edge of the Caribbean plate affects the Caribbean plate as a whole. This is a very small plate here that's being squeezed in between some dominant North American plate up here to the north and the South American plate to the south. And it looks as though a 4.8 occurred just a few minutes following this earthquake activity down in Panama, which makes sense because that's the general plate stress here in the area. Real quick, this is the Panama plate in the pink salmon area, subduction zone here, the Middle America Trench. What takes place here will ultimately affect areas around the Caribbean plate, and that's almost immediately, right? Look at that on the globe. 5.6 earthquake occurring at 10:08. About 10 minutes later, a 4.8 coming in here across the Puerto Rico area. So we got a lot of movement going on here. Add a little strain here to the piece of the puzzle, and things start to kick up and make sense here. Look at that, 4.8. 4.6 here by the USGS. 7 miles into the area of the Mona Passage region. Not a deep earthquake. That's actually a pretty shallow earthquake here for this area. Nothing showing up yet, though, for the 5-pointer from the USGS. But it's showing up here on the earthquake model for 5.6 right there. So we'll have to wait, see if they pick up on it. Either way, we got a train of domino effect activity going on here following that larger movement here across the Tonga Trench earlier. That's a lot of I can't really say deep, but a lot of large activity here in a short amount of time period. So what takes place here can ultimately affect areas across the entire plate boundary out here, like we're seeing right now tonight. So I want to go into statistics here. What's going on here for earthquake activity? I want to clarify something here. A lot of people think that what we're seeing is some unusual and unheard of historical earthquake activity here recently. It's never before been seen. Unfortunately, what's going on here is a wealth of information being put out here across social media, and you have every single site. You got weather sites, you got history sites, you got geology sites, you have maybe even political sites putting out earthquake information. So the knowledge, or at least the flow of information out there, is getting out to more people. So it may seem like there's more earthquake activity taking place out here, but there's really not. As far as worldwide activity goes, California, yes. California is one area where we can say this year has been somewhat elevated. So, but far as a worldview goes, look at this, folks. I pulled up here last year's earthquake activity, right? This is the entirety, well, at least 4.5 and above. This does not include every single microquake out here, right? This is only 4.5. And think about it, 4.5 underneath Los Angeles is going to shake things up, right? 4.5 and above last year. 8,234 earthquakes. So all this information that you're hearing from some of these fear-mongering weather sites and maybe some other sites out there saying, oh my gosh, there's 5-pointers in Tonga. Now we have 2 5-pointers or 2 6-pointers. Well, let me show you, for example, here the Tonga area. How does 1,000, well, you want to zoom in really close here? The Tonga area to get a more specific view. 839 earthquakes at 4.5 and above in the entire year of last year. The largest one is 7.6. 6-pointers are very common out here. Don't let anyone try and fearmonger you that there's, oh my gosh, there's a 6-pointer in the Tonga Trench. The world's ending. No, that's not the case. Earthquakes of this magnitude are very common out here across this area. We're talking about 839 of them. The largest one back in 2023 is 7.6. As you can see here, right? There's a lot of earthquake activity that occurs globally across this area. If I were to pull up the all magnitudes here, I'd probably lose my computer. It'd probably blow up. I don't know. But it's probably well over 50,000 earthquakes that take place out here. We're all just sitting on a ship, right? The North American continent here is a ship, along with the Pacific plate here as a ship as well, floating on a liquid ocean of magma, right? And we're all just kind of floating along here and adjusting according to the convection that's happening below the area. And that convection there, areas of heated areas, warp regions around the North American plate, the Pacific plate in general, and create these stresses along the plate boundaries. Look at that. Over 8,000 earthquakes there in last year. 4.5 and above, folks. So earthquakes are common out here. Please don't let anyone fearmonger the activity out here that we're seeing today. There's nothing of abnormal activity occurring across the Tonga Trench right now. You guys want to see how many earthquakes occur out here? Let's check this out real quick. So the number of earthquakes occurring each year on average is roughly right about here. Check this out here. We're looking at worldwide. I was underestimating this. There's over 1 million earthquakes year-wide between 2.0 and 2.9. As we go up, obviously the number is different. But in a year, we can see 7.0 to a 7.9, 15 of them. So 130, 6.0 to 6.9 like we've seen today. So this 6.9 we've seen is not rare, folks. Please don't let anyone... I don't like fear-mongering. I do not like it. I wish those, I don't know. To each his own, right? But I don't like it when people fear-monger. But... look at this here. 15 earthquakes of 7.0 to 7.9 on each year. M 8.0 and up, 1 on average per year. So this is the area that I'm going to cover right now because we have not seen an 8-pointer. And this isn't fear-mongering. This is just statistics here, informational activity. Let me bring this up here. I'm going to modify the results here. And we're going to go 6.5 and above. And we're going to go back here a little bit. 1995. Just to cover some activity out here across the globe, the world, the flat scale model Earth, however you want to look at it, okay? So 9.0 earthquakes are on average roughly about 3 in about a century time frame, about 100 years. We'll see about 3 9.0 earthquakes, right? So obviously the last 9-pointer was back in 2011. That's a pretty big earthquake in Japan. I think a lot of folks know that. That was a big one, tsunami and whatnot. The other 9-pointer back in Sumatra, that was the Indian Ocean earthquake. That was a big deal out here. Unfortunately, a lot of fatalities with that earthquake due to a subsequent tsunami. But that's it. So at least according to, but there was probably another 9. There was that 9.5 back in 1960, 9.5 in Chile, right? The big earthquake. So I don't think we're going to see a 9-pointer out here again. But The uncertainty here is the 8-pointers. I want to show you guys here real quick. We have not seen an 8-pointer since 2021, if I remember right. Right, 2021. There was a handful of earthquakes out there. We had the Alaska earthquake up there, 8.2, 2021, right there. And then also we seen the South Sandwich Trench there, 8.1, pretty big earthquake down there along the southern edge here of the globe. Also the Kermadec Trench seen 8.1 as well along that area of the plate boundary. Pretty big earthquake, but we have not seen any 8-pointers in about 3 years now. Now the question is, we seen 3 8-pointers within a year time span. That's a little, that's abnormal to see some elevated activity in that aspect. So are we looking at maybe a longer time frame here that we may not see an 8-pointer? It's a good question because they're stating here, you can look on any model here, that there should be at least one 8-pointer every year, if not every other year. And we haven't seen one in 3 years now. So we could be looking at maybe an 8-pointer spreading out here somewhere. I don't think a 9-pointer, but you never know. 9-pointers are on average, once again, about 3 every 100 years. And we've seen that, pretty easy. Japan, Chile, and then also Alaska. And also over here across the area of the Sumatra area. So I don't think we're going to see a 9-pointer, but you never know. Things could be on the little bit of an uptick out here. The question is there an 8-pointer coming out here? 3 years since no 8-pointer. The last magnitude here of considerable size. Remember the Turkey activity here? That was some 7-pointers going on here out across this area. But it's a good possibility. You never know. We could see some elevated uptick here going on across the area soon. Okay, USGS finally picking up on that Panama earthquake. Look at that. 2228 or 2208. About less than 10 minutes later, we seen that strain out here transfer here across the plate boundary. That's expected. That's the southern end here of the Middle American Trench where things add here to the strain across this region. It shows it here on the USGS or on the plate model map here. Whenever we get activity here along this region, that general motion, the plate motion, adds strain across the Caribbean plate, and that's where we're seeing the elevated activity out here tonight. Look at that, 5.8 and then a 4.6 almost immediately around this area. So we got we got some big time uptick going on here across the area. It's not fear mongering, it's just a little bit of wise information out here for sure. These large earthquakes can trigger a domino effect out here. You move one portion of the plate and obviously things can adjust accordingly, and that's what's going on out here tonight. As far as any major adjustment here across Southern California, well, oh goodness, got a 0.9 here, roughly within the middle of this activity, right off the San Andreas Fault. That's a an area I've been chatting about quite recently here, and it's got its reasons. We've seen elevated activity out here across Southern California recently. Couple areas, and you can pretty much draw a circle out here around the plate boundary of the San Andreas Fault, so keep an eye on that. This area very capable of producing an 8.1, hopefully not anything greater, but that's what they're claiming out here as far as seismologists and studies go. So we'll keep an eye on that, see what all this adjustment does to the west coast. Nothing going on through Yellowstone, but I do want to double check here. So yeah, just real quick, here's another earthquake magnitude scale here from the Michigan Tech site, showing that we see about 10 to 15 earthquakes here of 7.0 to 7.9 every year. 8.0 or greater, one every year or two. We'll check out this year's here in just a minute. That's 10 to 15. I don't know if we're up around that number yet or not. But I want to check Yellowstone here real quick, and then we'll go through today's update. Yeah, look at that. That's the 6-pointer, 6.9 that showed up there across Yellowstone, right? How in the world did an earthquake there in the area of Tonga show up on Yellowstone? Well, it's just goes to show you the sensitivity here of the earthquake seismograph station, and it's very sensitive. Pick up tremors, earthquakes well below, deep into the area, and that is a P wave followed up by the S waves from that large earthquake showing up there across Yellowstone. Pretty nice signature, no doubt. There's a couple other earthquakes though showing up around Maple Creek. These are very small spike fractures showing up across Yellowstone. Those are probably 0.2, 0.3, not magnitude 3s or 2, but 0.2 or 3. So well below the 1 magnitude. Very small earthquakes. Really not a whole lot going on. So real quick, let's see. They said, what is it? 10 to 15 earthquakes, right? On average each year for 7.0 to 7.9. Let's go see what we have here, okay? Let's go ahead and check this out. I do like to check out I'm a pretty big history buff. I love looking at history out here, no joke. So let's go here to January 1st here. Let's go ahead and pop that in. And we'll go to today's date, worldwide, 7.0. See what we got. We got about eight earthquakes of 7.0 and above. That's below average so far. We're already halfway through the year. It's almost September here, and on average, we got about 10 to 15. So it could go either way from here on out. The question is where. Definitely. So far, the largest earthquake this year looks to be the 7.5 out here into the Japan area. Remember Western Japan here? That triggered a... that was actually last year, if you think about it. Look at that. That's funny, because I typed in January 1st, and this covers last year. But I don't know. That's UTC time. It looks like they're including it in this year. Either way, we got about 8 earthquakes, 7.0 and above. A couple more in the forecast. We'll probably see an 8-pointer out here soon enough. The question is where. So we have to be on guard. Obviously, Southern California, well overdue. I don't know if that's going to be in the mix or not, but we'll just have to see what happens out here, folks. All right, let's cover, see what else we got. Hawaii, anything going on here across Hawaii? It doesn't look like we see any major adjustment going on following all this activity around the Pacific Plate. I do like to pay attention to Hawaii because, back out here real quick, because obviously it sits out there in the Central Pacific, and what goes on in the Pacific around the plate boundary affects the Hawaii area, the hot spot, right? So nothing major going on in terms of earthquake activity. There is some tropical systems, weather-wise, stirring things up out there, but we are seeing a little bit of inflation going on here across the summit area. Actually, a pretty good spike here across the area recently within the last few hours. So we'll continue to watch that. It's things are quite amplified in terms of magma accumulation underneath this area, specifically roughly about the eastern edge here of the summit area off to the upper east rift zone. Middle east rift zone is where we've seen most of the magma accumulation sitting over the last few months here. So we'll continue to keep that in mind there for some future eruptions, possibly soon. Wow, goodness, look at that 5-pointer off the coast there. Let's see, where is that? 5.4. That's actually a pretty decent earthquake there off the coast of Portugal there. Goodness. Not too often we see a large-scale earthquake activity out there across this area, but shaking things up this evening. That was at 9:11 local time here, and that looks like it was just actually it looks like this earthquake here, the 6.9, stirred up a lot of activity globally, because this earthquake activity here at 6.9 in Tonga was prior to the elevated activity here we're seeing globally. So it set a domino effect out here in motion globally across many of the plates out here. 6.9 is no joke, right? Think about 6.9 underneath Los Angeles. That would be a big earthquake that would make some major adjustment out here across the plate boundary. So what takes place out here thousands of miles away can ultimately have an effect across various other areas of the globe, and that's what we're seeing here tonight. Iceland got a 3.4 here across the rift boundary. That's interesting there. Further down south, not seeing too much. I did get a new mouse out here, so notice that I can zoom in pretty closely, zoom out pretty nicely. Yeah, it makes a big difference, right? I'm a little touchy when it comes to being able to zoom in on locations here, not have it all choppy and whatnot. $12. $12, not bad for a little bit of peace of mind, right? Alaska area, fairly quiet, aside from some typical activity out here. Not a whole lot going on there. Western areas of the Pacific plate, quiet. It seems like recently things have adjusted accordingly down south. There is a couple of fours up here off the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench there earlier this evening off the coast of Russia, 41 miles deep here to this area. That's where they've seen that larger scale adjustment here recently with the has it really been over a week? Oh my gosh, I'm losing track of time. That's a 7-pointer out here from back on the 17th. So obviously we got a lot going on out here, a little shuffling of the plates. It's almost like musical chairs, but we're playing musical plates out here, right? So we have to be on guard. I mean, this activity right here just goes to show you how one area of the plate can affect an entire different area of the plate. And in this case, we're looking at 2, 4, 6, 8, 1,000 miles away. 10 minutes later. 5.8. 10 minutes later, 4.6 adjustment going on there across the northern edge of the Caribbean plate. So, it may seem very significant and impossible in our little human. Can you see humans out here on this plate, on this map? Obviously not. You would have to zoom into a scale that is probably not capable here on the maps. All this is easily visible. Excuse me. If you think about a larger scale of things out here, how things just shuffle around. This is just a jigsaw puzzle that's floating around on volumes of magma and adjusting accordingly to the convection that's going on below and the general plate stress that accompanies the plate tectonics out here. So no doubt, firm believer that one area of the plate can affect regions not only closely, but also at a distance here. That's very visible right here. 10 minutes later. The general plate stress here points in this general area. And boy, did we see it. I like to point those out. I really like to point out the that activity. So let's see what else we got here across the area as far as any major movement. New Zealand, yeah. Couple of smaller threes there underneath North Island. I mean, it could go any time because this is one area obviously that needs to take place for adjustment. It can only warp and build up strain for so long, similar to California. I think we're well overdue here for some larger scale activity across the globe in many areas. All right, I'm going to move on here, folks. Space weather activity. Got a little bit of C flare activity right now from, goodness, look at that. A center disk sunspot. One right here, and it looks like maybe off on the western limb as well. That's a little bit of flaring going on here, that little loop. That is, well, let's see what sunspot is that. 3796 here in this area. Also a far side area here showing a little bit of C flare activity. So yeah, 3796 here, throwing off a little bit of flaring. We do have a number of sunspots that are coming around the bend here. Let me pop this back up. Eastern limb should get active here very soon. I was looking at the far side area of the sun, and let me show you guys here real quick here. This is from the 23rd. How does that make sense? That's 2 days behind. So yeah, that's a little old out here, Solar Ham. So guaranteed these areas here, this massive region, there's like 4 or 5 different areas that we need to watch once they come around the bend. I think we're going to be looking at some major solar flare uptick in the coming days once these arrive. This is 2 days behind, so guaranteed these are a little bit closer here around the eastern crest of the sun. This is the eastern limb. There's 3801 if you look here. August 26th. It should be popping up here around this area pretty soon. This is 3801 there's 3801 much further. So we'll watch this area for some sunspots returning that look pretty active there, at least on the far side image. Overall threat right now shows a 15% chance for X flare, M flare around 70, C flare around 99% chance or so. And no major roars in the forecast, but we'll kind of keep an eye on things there. Storm Prediction Center. Let's go ahead and check this out real quick. A little bit of activity overnight. I think tomorrow, Monday, is going to be a big deal out here across South Dakota, Minnesota area. We're looking at some tornado potential. Look at that. Even a 5% tornado potential out there across Brookings, South Dakota. We got Marshall, Minnesota, Worthington, Minnesota. Keep your eye on the sky out here. It's a fairly deep low pressure trough out here. Going to stir things up for some severe thunderstorm activity out here for the start of the work week. So we got the tornado threat along with some big time wind and also some big time hail in there as well. Notice that hatched area indicating some potential there of seeing a probability of 2-inch diameter hail or larger within 25 miles of a point. So it's kind of a big deal there, folks. Don't take this severe weather threat lightly. All right, I'm going to back out of here, folks. I hope everyone has a good night. There's a lot going on out here right now. That 6.9 has triggered a domino effect of earthquake activity around the globe. Keep an eye on California. It is quiet for now, but that may not be the case out here. You know, what affects areas thousands of miles away here from these large earthquakes it's a legit thing. It does look like things have stirred up out here across the Middle America Trench eastward, and that affects areas around the North American plate. So I'll catch you guys back out here in the morning, see what happens. Stay safe out there and have a good night. We'll see you guys here in the morning sometime.